"Why didn't you drive today?" It was the kind of question Mark had asked countless times before. But today it hit me like a punch to the gut. Why didn't I drive? The question lingered in the air, and I could feel the weight of it settle over me, heavy and suffocating. I could feel my throat tighten, my hands clutching my purse in my lap. This wasn't just about driving, it was about everything that had been taken from me. I looked out of the window, willing the tears that had been threatening to rise to stay where they belonged, buried deep down. I wasn't about to break in front of him. Not today. My name is Chinmayi, and I was about to take back everything I had let them take from me. Mark glanced over at me, his eyes still on the road. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what to say. The truth was simple, but I didn't want to admit it. Not to him. Not to anyone. He sighed, a little frustrated. "Chinmayi, I asked you something." I felt his gaze linger on me for a moment, but I didn't respond. The silence stretched on, thick and oppressive. I swallowed, my voice tight as I finally spoke. "I didn't drive because Jessica took it again." There it is. The truth, raw and unfiltered. And once it's out, I feel the weight of it lift, just a little bit. Mark frowned, but there's no real surprise in his expression. He's heard this excuse before, just not from me. "Why didn't you just say something?" He sounds dismissive, like it's a trivial matter. I don't know. Maybe because every time I say something, it doesn't make a difference. I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. I haven't let myself think this clearly about it before. But now it's like the floodgates have opened. I'm not just angry about the car, I'm angry because Jessica has always used it as her tool of control. And for years, Mark has let it happen. I glance at Mark, his focus still on the road, unaware of the storm that's brewing inside me. I don't say anything more. The silence between us is thick. I don't know if I'll be able to say what I need to say when the time comes, but I know one thing for sure. I can't live like this anymore. As I sit in the car looking out the window, memories rush back. The countless times Jessica had borrowed my car without even asking. At first, it was always small excuses. "I need it for an errand. It's just easier for me to take it." But each time I let it slide, thinking it was harmless. But now I see it clearly. Jessica wasn't just borrowing the car. She was taking control, and I was letting her. I wasn't just giving up my car. I was giving up my independence. I feel my pulse quicken as the realization sinks in. I've let her do this to me for so long. And I've let Mark stand by and let it happen. How many times have I tried to speak up, only to be dismissed? This ends now. I glance at Mark, his face still relaxed as if nothing is amiss. He hasn't heard me. Not really. Not until I show him the truth. I don't know if I'll be able to make him see it, but I'm going to try. This isn't just about the car anymore. One afternoon, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Jessica had come over again, casually dropping by and taking my car without asking, as usual. This time I snapped. "Jessica, why don't you just ask next time?" She looked at me with this fake innocence in her eyes, the kind of expression that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. "What's the big deal? I'm doing you a favor." It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was the way she talked to me, like I was beneath her. She saw my silence as weakness. "I don't want to be a favor anymore, Jessica. I want to be in control of my own life." Her expression shifted slightly, but only for a moment. Then she shrugged it off with that same passive-aggressive smile I'd grown so accustomed to. "Fine, whatever," she said, dismissing me with a flick of her hand. I walked away from the conversation with Jessica, my heart racing. But I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel heard. I felt the weight of it all. How many times I'd allowed this to happen. The emotional toll. I knew it was time to stop tolerating it. That evening, as I'm driving home from work, my phone buzzes. It's a message from Jessica. "We're doing this again. Don't bother asking for it back." My heart skips a beat. The message is so casually manipulative, it takes me a second to process it. She didn't even pretend to care. She didn't even try to make an excuse this time. She was telling me, flat out, that my car was hers, and there was nothing I could do about it. I gripped the steering wheel, a surge of cold rage running through me. It's over now. I've had enough. I pull into the driveway, my hands still trembling slightly from the text. It's clear now. I'm done being controlled. I'm done being silenced. Tomorrow, everything changes. The memory of our early days together replays in my mind, like a film I can't stop watching. When Mark and I first met, everything was different. I thought things would be easy. He was kind, sweet, attentive, or so I thought. His family seemed like a normal part of the deal, supportive, warm, until Jessica came into the picture. From the very beginning, Jessica always had this way of pushing herself into everything. especially where I was concerned. She never asked for permission, she just took. I should have seen the signs earlier. I should have known it wasn't just about the car. One night, I recall, Mark was away on a business trip, and Jessica just showed up at our door unannounced. She was upset, needing my car to run an errand. I hesitated but handed her the keys, thinking it was no big deal. When Mark came back, I didn't mention it. It seemed harmless enough. But that's the thing about manipulation. It's never harmless. It's always a little thing that builds up over time until you don't even notice you're trapped. I should have said something then. I should have put my foot down. But I was still naive, still thinking that if I just went along with things, they'd eventually see me as an equal. It didn't work that way. The more I let Jessica have her way, the more she took. And Mark? He just watched, silent, as if nothing was wrong. I remember one evening, sitting at the kitchen table, trying to talk to Mark about my day. I hadn't seen him in days, and I just wanted some time together. But Jessica called, needing the car again. Mark didn't even hesitate. He handed me the keys and said, "Jessica needs it. You don't mind, do you?" And just like that, I was invisible. I didn't matter. My needs didn't matter. And Mark, he didn't care enough to even see it. That was when I started to change. I stopped being the compliant wife. But the more I pulled away, the harder they tried to reel me back in. One afternoon, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Jessica had come over again, casually dropping by and taking my car without asking, as usual. This time I snapped. "Jessica, why don't you just ask next time?" She looked at me with this fake innocence in her eyes, the kind of expression that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. "What's the big deal? I'm doing you a favor." It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was the way she talked to me like I was beneath her. She saw my silence as weakness. "I don't want to be a favor anymore, Jessica. I want to be in control of my own life." Her expression shifted slightly, but only for a moment. Then she shrugged it off with that same passive-aggressive smile I'd grown so accustomed to. "Fine, whatever," she said, dismissing me with a flick of her hand. I walked away from the conversation with Jessica, my heart racing. But I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel heard. I felt the weight of it all. How many times I'd allowed this to happen. The emotional toll. I knew it was time to stop tolerating it. Tomorrow, everything changes. I couldn't stop replaying the events of the last few days in my mind. Everything felt like it was building up to something that couldn't be ignored any longer. I'd been the passive one, the quiet one, the one who let things slide. But the truth was clear now. I wasn't just letting things slide. I was letting myself be controlled. Mark hadn't mentioned Jessica, or the car again. Maybe he didn't want to acknowledge how ridiculous it all sounded. Maybe he didn't want to think about what I'd said, that I couldn't be the wife in the background any longer, quietly enduring his sister's constant manipulations. But I could feel it building inside me, like the quiet ticking of a time bomb. The longer I let it go, the harder it would be to break free. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I woke up the next morning with the weight of everything on my mind. The car, Jessica, Mark, my life. I'd always been the one to give in, the one who didn't make waves, but that had to change. It was now or never. I walked into the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the air. Mark was sitting at the table, sipping his morning cup, reading the paper. He looked up as I entered, but there was no surprise in his eyes, no recognition of the shift that had happened within me. "Morning," he said flatly. "Morning." I poured myself a cup of coffee, feeling the warm mug in my hands, the heat contrasting the cool resolve building in my chest. It was a small moment, a tiny pause before everything would change. "You know," Mark said, his eyes still on the paper. "Jessica was asking about the car again yesterday." The words hung in the air, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not giving it to her," I said, my voice steady but sharp. Mark looked up at me, his brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not giving it to her anymore. She doesn't have a right to it." The words were out, and the silence between us grew. Mark looked at me, his face unreadable. For the first time I saw something different in his eyes, an uncertainty, a flicker of confusion. Maybe he had always seen me as the compliant wife, the one who never questioned things. Maybe he didn't know what to do with the woman standing in front of him now, the woman who was taking control. "You're being unreasonable," Mark said, his tone starting to shift, getting defensive. "It's just a car. She only needs it sometimes. She's family, Chinmayi." "That's exactly the problem." I shot back, not backing down. "She's always needed it. But it's not just a car. It's about control. And I've let it happen for too long. I won't be a doormat anymore." Mark stood up, his chair scraping across the floor. His expression was starting to change, the calm demeanor slipping away, replaced with frustration. So now you're making a big deal out of this? Over a car? It's not about the car, I said, the words more forceful now. It's about everything. It's about you letting her take over our lives. And I'm done. I've been done. His face turned red, and I could see the familiar frustration building in him. But this time I wasn't backing down. He'd always used his calm voice to placate me, but I wasn't the same person who would just give in anymore. Fine, he said, his voice tight with anger. But I'm not the bad guy here. You've been just as complicit as she has, I said quietly, watching him struggle with the words. And that's what hurts the most. Mark stared at me for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. He didn't have anything to say back. He didn't need to. It was clear he knew what I meant, but admitting it would break him. As the morning went on, I could feel a shift between us. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I knew something had changed in me. The confrontation had started, and there was no going back. I couldn't keep living a life that wasn't mine. I wasn't just tired of the car being taken from me. I was tired of everything being taken from me. That afternoon, I received a text from Jessica. We need to talk. The car's important, Chinmayi. It's the only way we can keep things running smoothly. I read the message over and over, each time my stomach sinking lower. The subtle manipulation. The sense of entitlement. I knew exactly what she was trying to do, play the victim, make me feel guilty. But I wasn't playing her game anymore. I typed my reply quickly, without hesitation. It's my car. I'm done letting you use it. I hit send, then stared at the screen. This was it. The moment everything would change. Chinmayi stood there, staring at her phone. Jessica's reply would come soon. She knew it would be full of excuses, maybe even an emotional appeal, but Chinmayi wasn't backing down. The game had changed. The next morning, Jessica showed up unannounced, as always. I'd been expecting her. It wasn't a coincidence. It never was. She didn't knock, just walked right in like she owned the place. Hey, she said, giving me a sweet smile, the one she always used to get under my skin. I just wanted to talk about the car. I didn't move. I didn't offer her coffee. I didn't pretend to be cordial. I'd had enough of the niceties. I'm not giving it to you anymore, I said, the words coming out as calm as I could manage, but there was a firmness in my voice she wasn't used to. Her smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. It's not like you're using it all the time, Chinmayi. You don't even need it every day. Why make a big deal out of this? Because it's not just about the car, Jessica. It's about the way you've been controlling me. You take my car whenever you feel like it, and Mark never says anything. I've had enough. Her eyes flickered with something like annoyance, but she quickly masked it with that same sweet smile, though I could tell it didn't reach her eyes. You're overreacting, she said. It's just a car. Just let it go. No, I said, my voice stronger now. I'm not letting it go. Not this time. Her expression changed then, the sweetness turning to a more dangerous edge. You really think you can just stand up to me like this? You think you can tell me no and get away with it? I think I've been saying yes for far too long, Jessica. And look where it's gotten me. Jessica's face twisted into something darker, her smile gone now. You have no idea what you're dealing with, she said, her voice low and cold. You'll regret this. I stood my ground, looking her straight in the eye. I wasn't scared anymore. It was over. The evening dragged on, the weight of the confrontation still lingering in the air like smoke. I couldn't shake the image of Jessica's cold, dismissive face. She had been so sure of herself, so confident that I would just let her have the car like I always did. But today, something had changed in me. I knew I couldn't go back to being the quiet, compliant wife anymore. I couldn't just sit in the background while Jessica continued to play her games and Mark turned a blind eye. I had been invisible for too long. No more. The next few days passed in a haze. Mark and I barely spoke. He'd been distant ever since I confronted Jessica, as if the silence between us was some sort of punishment. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. There was too much at stake now. Every day that passed without me doing something, saying something, felt like I was losing more of myself. The quiet tension between us felt suffocating, but I knew it was only the beginning. I spent hours thinking about my next move. I had always been good at taking care of others, but now I needed to take care of myself. For so long, I had been the one who kept things together, the one who quietly dealt with the manipulation, the emotional abuse. I had allowed Jessica and Mark to dictate my life without ever really asking for my input. But not anymore. I could feel the control slipping away, and as it did, something inside me began to wake up. The anger, the frustration, the years of silence, I wasn't going to carry them anymore. That evening, I took a deep breath and reached for my phone. It was time to make things right. I had spent too many years silencing my own needs, trying to make everyone else happy, always sacrificing my own peace. Not anymore. I typed a message to Mark. I didn't know what to expect, maybe an argument, maybe more silence, but I had to try. Mark, we need to talk. This isn't about the car. It's about everything. I'm done being the one who is always overlooked, always expected to just go along. I'm done. Let's talk when you're ready. I hit send, then put the phone down. It felt liberating to take that small step, to put the truth out there, no matter what happened next. The response didn't come right away. In fact, it didn't come at all that night. But I didn't care. The message was out. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something for myself. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Mark's phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Jessica. "Where's the car? You didn't tell me she took it back." My heart sank. She had crossed the line again. But this time, it wasn't just about the car. It was about control. And I wasn't giving it up. Not again. When I saw Jessica's text, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her walk all over me anymore. She thought she could control everything, the car, my life, even my emotions, but this time, I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to play her game. I didn't respond immediately. I needed to let the tension build, to give myself time to think. Mark wasn't home yet, and I had a few hours of peace to gather my thoughts. I sat down at the kitchen table, the reality of what I had to do sinking in. I was tired of being the one who kept the peace, the one who silently allowed everyone around her to take what they wanted. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't just fighting for my car. I was fighting for my life, for my autonomy. And if that meant tearing down the walls they had built around me, so be it. When Mark finally came home, I knew he could sense the change. The house felt different, quieter. "Chinmayi," Mark started, his voice cautious. "We need to talk." I met his gaze, not flinching. "Yes, we do." He didn't ask about the text from Jessica. Instead, he sat down at the table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. His eyes avoided mine, and for a moment, I wondered if he was going to keep pretending nothing had changed. "I've been thinking about what you said," Mark said, his voice low. "About the car." I raised an eyebrow. "And maybe I've been too passive. I didn't realize how much this was affecting you. I'm sorry." That was it. I had expected an argument, a fight. But instead, I got an apology. It was hollow, half-hearted, and it made me sick to my stomach. Was this really the end of it all? Would Mark just say the words to calm me down, to make me forget? No, it wasn't enough. It would never be enough until he understood what was really happening. Until he realized that it wasn't just about the car. "I'm done with the empty apologies, Mark," I said, my voice steady. "You've let this go on for far too long. This isn't about the car. It's about control. It's about you and Jessica thinking you can decide everything for me." Mark stared at me, his face unreadable. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. I stood up, walking to the counter and grabbing the car keys from the bowl. "It means I'm taking back control of my life. And that starts now." I didn't hear from Mark for hours. It was as if my words had hit him harder than I thought. He had always been the one who was quick to apologize, to smooth things over with a few soft words. But now, he was silent, and I let the silence sit between us. I didn't call him. I didn't chase after him. I didn't beg him to understand. For the first time in my life, I refused to be the one to make peace. I spent the evening alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. The car, the arguments, the constant emotional toll. I had put up with so much for so long, and for what? To make Mark and Jessica happy? To keep the peace? It wasn't worth it anymore. As I prepared dinner that evening, I thought about my next steps. I had already decided I wasn't giving in. The car wasn't the issue. My life, my autonomy. That was what I was reclaiming. I glanced at my phone, and just as I expected, there was a message from Jessica. "Where's the car? You haven't replied to my texts." The boldness in her words, the sense of entitlement, made my blood boil. She wasn't going to get away with it anymore. Mark finally returned home, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for the conversation. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear his excuses or his apologies anymore. I was tired of listening. "Chinmayi," he said quietly, his voice uncertain. "I'm sorry. You're right. I've been too passive. But you need to understand, Jessica. She just wants the best for everyone. She didn't mean it like that." I looked him dead in the eye. "She doesn't want the best for me, Mark. She wants to control me. And you've been letting her. I'm done being controlled. If you can't see that, then maybe this is where we end." Mark was quiet for the next couple of days. His silence spoke volumes. I could feel the tension in the air like a physical presence, but this time it didn't make me nervous. It made me stronger. It made me realize that the silence between us wasn't a punishment. It was a shift. He was starting to see the cracks in the perfect little life we had built. He had always been so wrapped up in his family's expectations, in keeping the peace, that he had lost sight of me. It was almost as if he didn't know who I was anymore. But I wasn't going to make it easy for him to ignore me. Not anymore. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was a message from Jessica, of course. She never knew when to stop. "I told you not to play games. The car. Where is it?" Her entitlement was so thick it practically oozed from the screen. I could hear her voice in my head as I read the message. "You're being ridiculous, Chinmayi. It's just a car." I could almost picture her face, the smug smile she always wore when she knew she had control. But this time there was no smile. There was no passive-aggressive charm. It was just a demand. I could feel the anger rising in me, but I took a deep breath. This wasn't about the car anymore. This was about reclaiming my life from both her and Mark. She had always thought she could control me. She had always thought I would just let her have her way. But now I was done. I didn't answer her message right away. Instead, I put my phone down and went about my morning routine. But the anger still simmered just below the surface. I couldn't wait to finally have the confrontation I'd been building up to. Mark came into the kitchen later, looking as tired as I felt. We hadn't spoken much since the fight. He hadn't apologized or even acknowledged what I'd said about Jessica. He just went on like everything was normal, like I hadn't just told him the truth about his sister's manipulation. He poured himself a coffee and sat down at the table, his eyes avoiding mine. "You got a message from Jessica this morning," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. I didn't respond right away. The last thing I wanted to do was give him the satisfaction of hearing me admit anything. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Chinmayi, I know you're upset, but this isn't going to fix anything." I felt my pulse quicken. This wasn't a time for apologies. This wasn't about making things right. This was about standing up for myself, something I hadn't done in years. "I don't need you to fix anything, Mark," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I just need you to see what's been happening. I need you to see that I've been controlled, by Jessica, by you, by everyone around me. And I've had enough. This isn't just about the car. It's about everything." He didn't say anything for a long time. The silence between us was heavy. For the first time, I realized that I didn't need him to understand everything. I didn't need him to agree with me. I just needed him to see me for who I was, to understand that I wasn't his sidekick or his passive wife. I wasn't going to let his sister or anyone else make decisions for me anymore. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice tight. "What do you want me to do?" I stood up, walking over to the counter where the keys to the car sat. I picked them up, feeling the cold metal in my hand. The weight of them felt different now. They weren't just keys anymore. They were the symbol of everything I was reclaiming. "I want you to choose, Mark," I said, holding the keys out in front of me. "You can't keep letting her control everything. You can't keep choosing her over me. If you're not willing to see that, then maybe this is where we end." He stared at the keys in my hand, his face pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and anger. For a moment, I thought he might explode. But instead, he stood up, his eyes locking onto mine. "I'm not choosing her," he said quietly, his voice breaking slightly. "But I can't just let you walk away from everything." I took a deep breath. "I'm not walking away from you, Mark. I'm walking away from being controlled, from living in the shadow of your family. I'm walking away from being invisible. And if you can't see that, then I'm already gone." Mark stepped forward, his eyes filled with a mix of desperation and guilt. "Don't do this, Chinmayi. Don't walk away." But it wasn't up to him anymore. It was up to me. The day stretched on in an uncomfortable silence. The atmosphere in the house felt like it had been pulled taut, like a wire ready to snap. Every movement, every word felt heavy, laden with unspoken tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that the moment I had been waiting for, dreading, yet longing for, was finally here. The final confrontation. Mark hadn't spoken much after our argument, and I could feel him watching me, waiting for me to break, for me to apologize, to take it all back. But I didn't move. I didn't back down. This was my moment. I had spent too many years silent, too many years letting them decide my fate. No more. I spent most of the afternoon trying to stay busy, organizing the house, focusing on anything that would keep my mind occupied. But no matter how hard I tried, my thoughts kept drifting back to Mark. To what he might say. To what Jessica might do next. The control they both had over me had been so subtle, so ingrained in every part of my life, that I hadn't realized how deep it ran until now. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't just Jessica. It was everything. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea, waiting for Mark to come home. I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to let him or anyone else make me feel small anymore. If that meant walking away from this marriage, from this life, then so be it. When Mark finally came home, he walked through the door slowly, his eyes searching the room for any sign of what was next. I stood up from the table, the moment of truth upon us. "Chinmayi," he said softly, his voice strained. "I can't lose you." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in a long while. His words, his apologies, they weren't enough. They didn't fix what had been broken. And I knew deep down that I had to do this, for me. For the first time, I was going to make a choice for myself. "I don't need you to fix it, Mark," I said quietly. "I need you to see me. I need you to see me for who I am and what I deserve. Not as your wife. Not as Jessica's victim. But as me. As someone who has been holding everything together for too long and has nothing left to give." Mark stood there, staring at me, the weight of my words sinking in. "So, what happens now?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. Because the answer had already been given. I wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to live my life anymore. The days that followed were filled with tension, but they also felt like a breath of fresh air. Mark and I didn't speak much, but I didn't feel the weight of his silence anymore. It wasn't the same as before. I wasn't waiting for him to fix things, to make everything right. I was taking control. I hadn't expected him to change overnight. I hadn't expected him to suddenly become the partner I had hoped for. But I was learning to live for myself. I wasn't waiting for him to change. I was changing. The first few nights were the hardest. The loneliness crept in, the quiet absence of Mark's presence beside me, the quiet in the house that had once been comforting but now felt alien. But it wasn't loneliness I feared. It was silence. The silence that had allowed me to disappear, that had made me fade into the background. I wasn't fading anymore. I stood in front of the mirror one morning, staring at my reflection. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She was stronger. She was no longer willing to bend and break to fit into a life she hadn't chosen. I had walked away from so much in my life. From the family dynamic that kept me tethered, from the marriage that kept me silent. But now, I was walking toward something new. A life where I would choose the direction. A life where I would make my own decisions. As I stood there, a quiet voice in my head whispered, "What's next?" For the first time in years, I didn't have an answer. But that was okay. For once, I was living life on my own terms. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. It took a long time to heal, and I'm still a work in progress. I want to ask you guys, have you ever had a moment that felt like an ending, but turned out to be a new beginning? Let me know in the comments below if my story resonated with you. I'd be so grateful if you'd give this video a like and subscribe for more stories. It really helps the channel out. See you in the next one.